So welcome everyone on this fine Monday afternoon. What's that? Yeah. So welcome to meeting number 40 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security. We will start by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin people. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25th, 2021. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. The meeting is public. So pursuant to Standing Order 106 sub 4, the committee is commencing consideration of the request by 5 members of the committee to undertake a study of developments regarding the allegations of political interference in the Nova Scotia mass murder investigation. I will now open the floor to debate. Ms. Stanchel.
Mr. Chair, I'm just going to formally move the motion that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee meet for one meeting on Thursday, October 27th, in relation to the public release of the recording of RCMP Commissioner Lucky's call to the Nova Scotia RCMP and the allegations of political interference in the 2020 Nova Scotia mass murder investigation, and that the RCMP Commissioner appear in the first hour, that Minister Blair be invited to appear in the second hour, and that the previously scheduled witnesses for C21 be added to an additional meeting for the C21 study.
Thank you. The motion is in order and the motion is on the floor. Any debate? Ms. DeMoff.
Thank you, Chair. I've read the transcripts over. I see absolutely nothing in here that changes what we already heard in 2 hours of testimony with Minister Blair and Commissioner Lucky. I want to thank you, Chair, for finding the time for us to meet today so that we didn't have to lose a meeting on our study of Bill C-21. But in theory, this motion that was brought forward could have had us lose 2 meetings on Bill C-21, which quite frankly, from this side of the House is a priority for us. Getting Bill C-21 passed, getting the hearing from witnesses who are making the time to come and talk to us about Bill C-21. So it is a priority. So Chair, thank you for doing this. And I notice in the motion that was brought forward, it says that an additional meeting be added. But I mean, given House resources, there's never any guarantee of additional meetings. So I would think a written explanation from the Commissioner would suffice, but if not, I would like to amend the motion, Chair, and I'll officially do this, that we amend the motion that where it says that the committee meet for one meeting on Thursday, October 27th, that it may be amended to say that the committee meet following consideration of Bill C-21.
Thank you. The amendment is in order and debate on the amendment. So we had Mr. Ellis after Mr. Moff. So did you want to go ahead?
Go ahead.
So
Who's that?
Mr. Ellis, please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Chair. Certainly this is shocking. It's shocking in the sense, Chair, that you have to really repress the disbelief and dismay, Chair, with which I hear members opposite speaking about this. This is a point where we understand very clearly that there was interference from a political level in an active police investigation in my riding, Chair, in which 23 people died. I can't underscore that enough, Chair. If this committee refuses to find time to revisit this issue when it's related to a political interference and also an RCMP commissioner, of course, at the very highest of the high levels of the RCMP, how can anybody have faith in the process of government in Canada? This is absolutely ludicrous and, as I said, shocking from the perspective of the people that I represent. And it's quite a slap in the face, I would suggest.
Are we not debating the amendment, or are we debating the main motion?
We are
Just
debating
want
the
a
amendment,
clarification.
and I hope Mr. Ellis will get to that point.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And once again, I find it shocking that I get interrupted, that we need to underscore the importance of the ridiculous nature of this amendment that's proposed here, Mr. Chair. People died, and then to a government to use this for political gain is absolutely shocking. And this committee not wanting to undertake any type of action to remediate the situation, which has clearly changed. When now we know very clearly, Mr. Chair, that Mr. Campbell's notes pointed out what Commissioner Lucky said and what Minister Blair said. Now we have a transcript of a meeting which also corroborates that. And we have other testimony at the Mass Casualty Commission, Mr. Chair, which corroborates all three of these things going together to have an understanding of exactly what happened. We have an unbelievably clear picture here, Mr. Chair. And for this committee not to want to undertake having those members back again, is shocking. It's a slap in the face. It's a disservice. It's an apolitical move towards the people in my riding. And quite frankly, Mr. Chair, it's an affront to democracy. So I can't understand how anybody could sit here and not want to understand very clearly when new evidence has come forward exactly what is happening here. And once again, I can't understand this at all, Mr. Chair. And this type of amendment to a very simple motion to have the major players return to a committee that has tried to understand this unbelievable political interference for many meetings now, certainly in my mind, not enough to assuage the concerns which are happening in the riding of Cumberland-Colchester. And when you look at that, you know what? People from Nova Scotia, Mr. Chair, they don't want excuses anymore. They want answers. And they're not getting answers from the Mass Casualty Commission. And another, again, affront to their goodwill and solitude is this committee that, again, does not want to provide them any answers to what happened at a political level. And I just can't understand how anybody on the opposite side could want to vote against this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. We go to Ms. Dancho, then Ms. Perkins, then Madame Michaud.
No, Mr. Chair, I'm fine. You can go to the NDP.
Okay,
Thank you.
Mr. Perkins, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo, as a fellow Nova Scotian, Mr. Ellis's comments, but I would point to the amendment to the main motion, which is delaying the examination of this new evidence that was only released last Friday and given to the Mass Casualty Commission after the Mass Casualty Commission has finished its public hearing process. So I think it's incumbent upon this committee to delve into the details of the clear contradictions and lies between what has been said in committee, what has been said in the House, and what has been said between witnesses at the Mass Casualty Commission. Mass Casualty Commission is on an urgent agenda to finish their report, but they don't have the ability to re-examine these witnesses at this time because of the mandate and the way the mandate was structured by the federal government. So I would encourage all members to vote against the amendment and vote for the main motion so that we can get to this urgent study. What could be more urgent? And I understand that C21 is urgent to a number of people, but I think the mass murder of 22 Nova Scotians is of utmost importance for this committee and paramount importance to be studied. And the study of C21 can wait another meeting or two while we delve into these clear contradictions by the minister and the commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you. Madame Michaud, and then Mr. McGregor. Madame Michaud.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's an extremely important meeting that needs to take place. I agree with my colleagues from the Conservative Party. But like the Liberal Party members, I am concerned we might delay the study of Bill C-21. Perhaps you can answer my question, Mr. Chair or Mr. Clerk. Perhaps there's a way to have a meeting outside of our regular committee hours to hold that meeting, just like we're doing today. This is not a usual time frame for us to meet as a committee anyways. So would it be possible to do that without using up any of our time?
I'll answer that. It is extraordinarily difficult to find extra time. We only got this meeting today because Foreign Affairs canceled, and we heard through the grapevine that it was available. We have been trying for a number of weeks to get the coming to Thursday extended by an hour. That has been declined. It's very, very difficult to get any extra time in a schedule. So hey, I hope that answers the question. You still have the floor if you're not finished.
Ben, j'ajouterais peut-être.
I would add that in this case, I find that tough. You know, it's unfortunate to postpone this because I feel studying Bill C-21 will take a while to study. There are a number of issues we have to look at. I'm sure that clause by clause will also be the subject of discussions. I agree that this is urgent, somewhat urgent. It really is. The time is of the essence. It's now, you know, that it would be ideal for us to get these transcripts of these discussions with Brenda Lucky. It would be unfortunate to come back to this in 2-3 months. But at the same time, it might be good to have the assurance from the Conservative Party that it would be one meeting and that it wouldn't be something else added on to postpone. And I know it's in good faith. I know they don't want to delay C-21, but if there are constantly new urgent things to deal with, it's possible that that bill that to me seems like a priority could be postponed. I would be open to having a meeting shortly, but only one.
Thank you. Mr. McGregor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, with respect to C-21, I mean, I have an interest also in getting on with it, but by my count, we still have 5 meetings of witnesses remaining for C-21. We agreed to 8 total, and we've done 3. So if we were to continue the current schedule, that would take us to the week following Remembrance Day, the constituency week that we have. I think the Conservatives acted with their original motion in good faith by adding that last line so that, you know, I understand it's not always easy to find an additional meeting, but we did manage to find an additional meeting today. In the interest of not delaying C-21, I could be open to trying to find some time during the constituency week, if that helps. But I think we should keep it open. So the only thing that concerns me, Mr. Chair, is that naming October 27th, I know that the minister and the commissioner, by virtue of their positions, are pretty busy people. So are we shoehorning ourselves by naming a specific date if they're not available? I am interested in seeing them come as soon as possible, but we do have to work with 2 very busy people's schedules. So I think with respect to the amendment, I'm not sure I'm totally in favor of it yet. I do think we can find a way to accommodate both the bill and the timeliness of this particular issue that's before us.
Thank you, Ms. Demoff, followed by Ms. Nacho. Okay, well, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the comments from all parties. What I would say about the additional meeting, I appreciate the mention from my colleague from the NDP. We did, in good faith, want to make efforts with this motion not to delay C-21. We recognize that that is a keen priority for other parties in particular, and for us, parts of the bill certainly. And so that's why we added that in. And my understanding is actually the Liberal Whip's office was looking to add additional meetings for C-21 anyway. So I believe that they're very familiar with the committee schedule. So I'm just surprised that now it seems that we're not able to find time. I'm very confident, in fact, that we can find time to have an additional meeting to fit in C-21 on schedule should we need to. In terms of the timing for the minister and the commissioner, I will say that we don't normally ask for ministers to resign or for the commissioner of the RCMP to resign, but it's very clear based on the audio recording and what was said in committee that someone is not telling the truth, and that would be either the head of our RCMP or the minister, the former minister of public safety. That is very significant, Mr. Chair. I would be pretty shocked if the minister was not willing to make time in his schedule to come defend himself. The same for the RCMP. In fact, I'd be very, very shocked and surprised. I think that they owe it to Canadians to come explain themselves. We have conflicting testimony from those involved. And again, these are powerful people who appears to have very much misled the Standing Committee of Public Safety and National Security. So I would assume that they would put everything aside to come defend themselves as they have in their statements, but again, they need to be held accountable by this committee on behalf of Canadians. So I am very confident that they will make time in their schedule as per the motion, unless they are something medical or they're out of the country. But even then, we have Zoom capabilities. If they are out of the city, they can still Zoom in. So pending some life-threatening situation, I would assume that they would want to come defend themselves and answer our questions, Mr. Chair. So it's our expectation that this motion passes, that they will honor this motion and that they will come explain themselves to this committee. Lastly, I would say again, I'm completely open to meeting during the break week. Again, we are not looking to delay this bill. That is our intention. I remain committed to that. And so I very much appreciate working together with the opposition parties to hold this government accountable, as is our duty to Canadians. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I would just, for information, it wasn't the Liberal whip that was looking for time. It was me. I was trying to find more time to move things forward. Pardon me?
No, you got promoted.
There you go. I'm not sure that's a promotion. So Ms. DeMoss, followed by Mr. McGregor.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I don't think we can assume that there's going to be extra time available to us. And just, I think everyone seems to be agreeable to doing it during the break week, provided this won't,
The C21 meeting during the break week.
so should we have cross conversation here, Chair, or what should we be doing?
No, we
here?
shouldn't. I guess we should direct
Um,
and I'll try and sort things out.
So I think there's agreement to have an additional meeting during the break week. I think we've got a schedule for this week, and with all due respect to my Conservatives colleagues and to Mr. Ellis for saying that we have refused to deal with this, both Minister Blair and the Commissioner have appeared at the committee on this exact issue, and the Commissioner of the RCMP issued a statement yesterday about the recording, which is only a partial recording, I would add, but issued to say that nothing has changed in her statement. So to say that no one has been accountable, they have both appeared before this committee in the past. So they have been here. We did make time for them to come. And I've read the transcript. I think, quite frankly, Commissioner is very frustrated with the local RCMP, the lack of communication from the local RCMP during this horrific massacre that occurred. She's frustrated by the way that they were dealing with communications from Nova Scotia. And so, that's obvious. But on the date, Chair, I have suggested following C21. So I guess we should maybe, if you want to vote on that and someone wants to put in an alternate date, then I would be open to that, Chair.
Thank you. So we go to Mr. McGregor, followed by Ms. Dancho, followed by Mr. Motz. Mr. Motz, okay. So Mr. McGregor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm not sure I can support the amendment, and I would have a suggestion for alternative wording after a vote. But I mean, with respect to my Liberal colleagues, these are pretty damning quotes. When it says, quote, "It was a request that I got from the minister's office," end quote. And then later on, when the commissioner is talking about what's going on in the world of handguns, the fact they're trying to get legislation going, that this legislation is actually to help police. I mean, my ultimate goal with this is not just to focus on the problem. I think we also need to look at solutions. And I think part of the problem is the fact that our Royal Canadian Mounted Police Act, Section 5.1, is far too vague and open to interpretation. Like Mr. Chair, it just reads, that there should be a commissioner of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police to hold office during pleasure, who, under the direction of the minister, has control and management of the force. So under the direction of the minister, what direction is that? That's very open to interpretation. I think it is going to continually bring us back to this problem. There are jurisdictions, provincial jurisdictions in Canada. There are jurisdictions around the world which have attached far greater specificity in their police acts to what powers the minister has and what powers a police commissioner has. And those two shall never cross. So I hope that through this conversation that we not only get clarification from the minister and the commissioner, and I think they do need to come as quickly as possible, but I also think we as a committee have a duty to Canadians to explore how do we prevent this from happening in the future, because that if we don't explore that question, that will be a dereliction of our duty to Canadians. We not only want to get to the bottom of this and find the truth, but we also have to be solution oriented. So I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. Mr. Motts, please.
Thank you, Chair. I move we cease debate on the amendment, please, and adjourn debate on the amendment, please.
You move to adjourn debate? I think you can only move to adjourn debate
Oh, you can move to adjourn debate on an amendment.
because the debate will carry on until, as long as anybody has to speak. You can,
No, you can
Well-
adjourn.
you can. And what that would do to us, that would, that would,
Chair.
if there are no more speakers on the amendment,
Est-ce qu'on peut juste répéter l'amendement?
Can we just repeat the amendment before we vote on it?
um, go ahead.
Thanks. And I think, rather than adjourning, I think we should just vote that down and then look at doing something on a break week. And Alistair, you said you had wording for that. So the amendment was to remove Thursday, October 27th and replace it with following consideration of Bill C-21.
Is there any more discussion on the amendment? Then let's go to a vote. All in favor
The amendment?
of the amendment? We're voting on the amendment. The amendment is to schedule the meeting, to change the motion that the date is following the, the consideration. Yes. So all in favor of the amendment? All opposed? I think it's defeated. Mr. McGregor.
Okay, so I will move an amendment to the main motion, and it's a simple one. So after the words Thursday, October 27th, I would just simply insert "or as soon as possible,"
The
just to
amendment
give
is
a
in
little bit
order.
of leeway.
And,
I understand schedules can be a bit demanding, but we do want them as soon as possible.
Is there a debate on Mr. McGregor's amendment? Ms. Dancho?
I do appreciate the amendment. I just, again, want to reiterate that I think it provides the minister and the commissioner an out. They could not be available till after Christmas, for example, and we don't have an accountability mechanism for that. So I just want to make that very clear, that I think this provides an out for those who we're trying to hold accountable. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any, Mr. Motts?
Is it possible, Mr. McAllister, that rather than as soon as possible, we put an end date on the as soon as possible? And that would be sometime certainly before we have to break, so before the end of next week. All right,
I think that's a sub-amendment. Can we do a sub-amendment?
but not if he chooses to include that in his
Okay,
motion.
so that's a sub-amendment, I guess. There's
Or is it
no-
a friendly amendment?
There's strictly no such thing as a friendly amendment, but
Well, maybe
if
not in this
Mr. McGregor agrees to that amendment, if you restate it, we'll pretend that that's how you moved it. So,
So mine was the amendment. I'll let Mr. Motts read out how he will amend my amendment. So if he wants to,
Sub-amendment.
because he's got the wording.
go ahead.
I would say, Mr. Chair, that is a sub-amendment, is a sub-amendment to the motion or the amendment by Mr. McAllister, that rather than as soon as
McGregor.
possible. Did I say
McGregor.
McAllister? Sorry,
McGregor.
McGregor. Sorry. We don't know who McAllister is, but
Yeah.
that as soon as possible be deleted and put in by November 1st.
Okay, so on the sub-amendment, Ms. DeMoff, please.
So I'm a little bit confused. It's on Thursday, October 27th or before?
Or as soon as possible before November 1st.
Before November, before November 1st, you said, Glenn?
By November 1st. That's next Tuesday
That provides Friday, Monday, Tuesday.
and Wednesday and Thursday this.
Oh, yeah, this week, but just gives a couple extra days.
So could we, sorry to do this, but could we amend that just before November 10th?
We can't go
From now.
any further down the amendment
Okay,
rabbit hole. We also we're limited to our regular meeting slots, right? So we've got next Tuesday, we've got Thursday, we've got Tuesday, and we've got Thursday again, right? And the clerk is checking into possible availability during the break week, but that's what we've got right now.
If I could adjust that, my sub amendment to say actually to give more flexibility to the third, by the third of, that gives us 10 days from now to have it completed. So that gives us 3 more meetings after tomorrow. So that's 4 meetings away. We have 4 meeting options.
Okay, so your sub-amendment is that to Mr. McGregor's amendment that occur on or after this Thursday.
On or before
But on or before, such that it's before
November 3.
November 3rd.
Yeah, or on or before
December
November
3rd.
3.
November 3rd. Okay, we're playing a little bit fast and loose with procedure here, but I think we can work with that. Madame Michaud.
Je pense pas que je peux proposer un autre.
I don't think I can put forward a new sub-amendment to that, but perhaps Mr. Moss would agree to extending that to the 10th rather than the 3rd of November, which would give the clerk the riding week as well. I don't generally like to sit during those riding weeks because we have work to do in our respective ridings. Perhaps the minister or the commissioner may not be available, or there might not be a time slot for that meeting. Perhaps during the riding week, that might be an option. So I'm not sure if he's open to amending his, changing his sub-amendment, but if not, I would possibly be voting against the sub-amendment to then propose a sub-amendment that would extend to the 10th.
Okay, so Mr. Motz,
No, I think, having the motion read to the 3rd of November gives us 4 full meetings.
okay, fair enough. So is there any further discussion on, are we clear about this amendment? Sub-amendment, sorry.
Mr. Chair, if you could clarify what we are voting on, please.
Okay, Mr. McGregor made a motion to amend the date to be on the 27th or as soon as possible afterwards. And Mr. Motz has modified that such that it occur on or before the 3rd of November. Fair enough? Okay,
Mr. Chair, just to be clear that extends the original motion by an entire week of availability. So now we're looking at 10 days of leeway for the commissioner and the minister to come to committee, which is considerable compared to the original motion.
thank you, Ms. DeMott.
thanks, Chair. So we wouldn't support what's on the floor, but we would support a change that Christina proposed to November 10th.
Okay, so if this, anyway, okay, fair enough. So we have to have a vote on this sub-amendment. So is there any further discussion on this sub-amendment?
I raised my hand, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, go ahead,
and-
Mr. Van Bynen.
Thank you. The intent here was to utilize free time, and that is why I would support extending the before November the 10th amendment. I think it's important, but I think both C21 and this investigation is important, and it's worth the commitment of our time during the riding week.
Thank you, Ms. Van Bynen. That is a possible future sub-amendment. However, the amendment right now is to extend, according to Mr. McGregor, as modified further by Mr. Mott. So the sub-amendment of Mr. Mott is what we are now voting on. So are we ready to vote on this? All in favor of Mr. Mott's sub-amendment? All opposed? it fails, right? Okay, so we're now back to Mr. McGregor's amendment, which is to have the motion, sorry, have the meeting on the 27th or as soon as possible, as afterwards as possible. Is there any further discussion on that or any further amendments? Ms. Michaud, Madame Michaud.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would propose a sub-amendment to Mr. McGregor's sub-amendment. So following Thursday, October 27th, or as soon as possible, before November 10th, 2022.
Okay, Ms. DeMoff.
Can we just say on or before November 10th?
Le ou avant.
Ms. Dancho.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I understand we're trying to provide a little bit more leeway to the minister and the RCMP commissioner. As we've said, we provided in good faith an additional week that was voted down. Now we're looking at 2 additional weeks. But I will point out that during break weeks, the media is not paying us close enough attention. So it really is very convenient for the minister and the commissioner if they do come to committee during break week when eyes will not be as on them as well as much as they would otherwise. So I just wanted to point that out to committee members. I think this is important. This is a public interest story. This is about a minister possibly lying on the record and an RCMP commissioner. So I think it's important that we have folks that are in Ottawa during a sitting week when the ministers aren't zooming in from their living rooms and their home ridings. The minister is here this week, and I think it would be appropriate to have it now, but I just wanted to put that on the record for this motion, sub-amendment.
Thank you. We have Ms. Michaud, Madame Michaud, and following Mr. and then Mr. Ellis. Madame Michaud.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to be clear, it's not really to give them an out, neither the minister nor Ms. Lucky. Really, it's out of respect for the administration of the House. There are a number of committees that can get canceled because perhaps the situation for interpreters is not ideal. There was a recent incident at the Senate that occurred. It is difficult to find available time slots. So it's a consideration for the employees of the House, employees of the administration. Everyone has to work to set up a new time slot. So sometimes people have to find new time slots and perhaps people may be overworked. It's to give them a bit more time. Really, it's not about the minister and the commissioner.
Okay, thank you. And sometimes we get lucky like we did today. Mr. Ellis, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, I'll respectfully disagree with my colleague from the block. This is not about the House resources. It's not about Minister Blair in the sense of his time. It's not about Commissioner Lucky in the sense of her time. This is about the understanding, as I mentioned previously, for 22 people and an unborn child who died. It's as simple as that. Those who affected this investigation, of which the people in Nova Scotia have entirely lost faith in the process, need to have answers, Mr. Chair. And I think it's a travesty to think that we need to make time for House resources. That may be a reality. I understand that. But for us to sit here in this committee and not attempt to put our best foot forward, that's not good enough. It is not good enough. This committee needs to do better. There's new evidence here. It is exceedingly clear that Commissioner Lucky and Minister Blair have conflicting stories. And to sit here and to say that we need to be pandering to this or that or trying to smooth things over, it's not good enough. That is not good enough. Is that why we came here? Do we come here to say, oh, we're too busy, or oh, the minister's too busy? That makes no sense to me. That's nonsensical. People are too busy to come here to answer for mistruths or half-truths or misleading or whatever parliamentary word I'm going to use today because I'm going to maintain a measured approach. That is unacceptable. It's ridiculous. It's nonsense. This is beyond any common sense. You know, people looking at these transcripts now and saying, oh, that's not what the commissioner said. Well, let's get the dang commissioner in here and make her understand then what she said. Let's get the minister in here, Mr. Chair. Let's get them both in here. Then we don't have to be over here going along. No, let me finish. This is
No,
my time.
Stop.
And you know
Stop.
what? This is inappropriate.
Stop. Could you keep your voice down for this on the behalf
Very
of the
good. Very good
interpreters,
point,
right?
Chair, and I respect that. But this is an emotional thing for me, Mr. Chair, and the people in this committee need to understand that. They need to understand very clearly that we can no longer allow people to go on, such as my colleagues across the aisle, and say, this is what I think the commissioner said, or this is what I think the minister said. That's not right. Let's get them in here. Let's have them go through the transcripts themselves. Let's have them understand what was said at the MCC. Let's have them understand what Darren Campbell said. Let's have them understand what Deputy Commissioner Leather was told not to talk about by the Justice Minister lawyers. Let's have them in here and let's make them atone for what they have said. As simple as that.
Thank you. That's the subject of the main motion. Any further discussion on the sub-amendment?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Van Bynen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify Ms. Dancho's comments that the concern about extending it to November 10th was not enough media. Did I hear that correctly?
Mr. Van Bynen, I think you're well aware that ministers go home for break week. I think it's important that they come to committee in person. They are here this week. They should be here in person as well. The public wants to have answers on this. And I think you're well aware of what break week means. So I don't think I need to further clarify my comments to you, Mr. Van Bynen.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the sub-amendment by Madame Michaud? Seeing none, let's have a vote. All in favor of the sub-amendment of Madame Michaud's sub-amendment, raise their hands, please. I see that as a yes. All opposed? The sub-amendment carries. So we now return to Mr. McGregor's motion as modified by Ms. Michaud, Madame Michaud. Is there any further discussion on Mr. McGregor's motion as modified by Madame Michaud? Seeing none, let's have a vote on that. All in favor?
What are we voting on? Can you
Okay.
give us the wording for it, please?
This is a test, right? So Mr. McGregor voted that we modify the main motion to be October 27th or as soon as possible thereafter. Madame Michaud added the text subject that it occur on or before the 10th of November. Is that correct? And that is the motion we now, that is the amendment we are now voting on. So is there any further discussion? Mr. Van Bynen, go ahead.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I wonder if we might have the vote called out for members. It's difficult for me to see how the votes are going, largely because the screen displays only the speaker.
Fair enough. If we're ready to vote,
Thank
I'll ask the clerk to conduct a poll to poll the vote, please.
So Ms. Damoff. Mr. Chan.
Yes.
Mr. Noor Mohammed.
Yep.
Mr. Shifke. Mr. Van Bannen.
Yes.
Ms. Dancho.
Yes.
Mr. Mutz.
Yes.
Mr. Shipley.
I guess. I didn't think, I thought Perkins and him were voting.
Oh, yes. Yeah, my apologies. Mr. Ellis.
Yes.
Mr. Perkins.
Yes.
Madame Michaud.
Je dirais en faveur.
Mr. McGregor.
Yes.
Motion for the amendment is carried. So we now go back to the main motion as amended by Mr. McGregor and further amended by Madame Michaud. Is there any further discussion on the main motion? Mr. Ma, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And, you know, I think every single member in the House of Commons, every single Canadian was devastated by what happened in Nova Scotia. And to imply that that we weren't is and in the way it was done is I actually find quite offensive. I think every single Canadian was absolutely shocked and heartbroken. And you know, the reason the inquiry was called was get to the bottom of why things happened the way that they did. During that time, we had Commissioner Lucky here. We had Minister Blair here. There's been a recording, a partial recording of a phone conversation that had. It's not all there. There's been one line that's been quoted extensively, but you know, there's a number of other quotes. Even the reference that Mr. McGregor made to about you know, legislation is coming. Well, you know, that wasn't a secret. That was in our platform. That was discussed regularly. So there was nothing confidential about the fact that legislation was coming forward. Both Commissioner Lucky and Minister Blair have been very clear, most recently Minister Blair in the House, saying that he did not direct the commissioner. To start implying that by not supporting this motion, we're not supporting the people of Nova Scotia and the families and friends and loved ones of those who've died is just simply not true. We have heard from those. We have heard during the inquiry. So, you know, Mr. Chair, it's unfortunate to hear comments like the media won't be here on a break week, because I mean, either we want to get to answers or we want to have a meeting so that the media is here. That's also is disappointing. So I'm not going to support the motion. I think we've heard enough. I don't think anything has changed from when we had the commissioner and the minister here previously. And, you know, as I went through the transcript, you know, Commissioner Lucky is the commissioner of the RCMP, and she has every right to expect that the people who work for her should be respectful. And I time and time again through this, she was upset with timelines. She was upset with the way that the media was being handled in many ways. She couldn't get a chronology of what had happened. She couldn't get a map for days, and had offered assistance to Nova Scotia, and it didn't come forward. So I don't think there's anything new from this transcript, and so won't be supporting to bring them back. I also, sorry, Chair, I also appreciate, however, the addition of an extra meeting, because C21 has to be a priority, and it has to remain a priority for our committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have Ms. Dancho, followed by Mr. Ellis, followed by Mr. Nur Mohammed. So, Ms. Dancho.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's very clear that Conservative members and our colleague represents the area where 22 people and a pregnant woman were killed. So I think that it's very obvious why our emotions are very high about this. The idea that the Minister of Public Safety at the time saw the death of 22 people, including a pregnant woman, as an opportunity to get his legislation passed is disgusting. The fact that he came here and misled the committee on the record, what he said directly contradicts what Commissioner Lucky said during the summer, let alone now that we have an audio recording of the actual meeting. He fully denied knowing that the commissioner was going to go against her own advice to jeopardize an investigation and try to get information released. He said he didn't know anything about that on the record in committee. He also denied asking her to do that. And yet in the audio recording, it says that she says that his office requested that she do that. And then she confirmed to the minister that she would. To me, that is very clear, and there's no way that you can see that otherwise. Either she's lying or he's lying, or perhaps they're both lying, which is that is why we've asked them both to resign. You can't get more cut and dry than how contradictory that is, Mr. Chair. And this was during a time that funerals hadn't even been had. And we may have a minister here that was looking at that as an opportunity. The commissioner tied this to Liberal policy. That was why she was going against her own advice to push for information to be released that she just days before said in writing to the minister's chief of staff, the national security advisor, do not release this beyond the minister and the prime minister because it could jeopardize the investigation. She said that in writing. Only days later, she was reprimanding her deputies for not sharing that information because she had committed to the minister that she would, who denied that he ever asked her to do that. So it is very clear that there was ruthless political posturing being done during this time, going against expert advice, looking to knowingly jeopardizing an investigation for political gain. So I think that is why our emotions are running very high. It's deeply upsetting, and the minister must be held accountable, as should the commissioner. And the public has every right to be fully aware of that. And it isn't right that there's any move to downplay this or push it off for months or push it during week when people aren't paying attention or can zoom in from their home. It is very important that we host this, and I would call on the minister, if he truly means what his statement to the media said, then he should have no problem coming to committee this week, and he should bring the commissioner with him, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis, followed by Mr. Nur Mohammed. Mr. Ellis, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start off by apologizing to the translators. As Ms. Dancho correctly points out, this is an exceedingly emotional time, and again, I do apologize for speaking loudly. And not with the emotion, but for the loudness. Absolutely. That being said, Mr. Chair, I find it absolutely appalling that we're going to sit here in this committee today and talk about the he said, she said of all of this, when we could actually solve this issue. We can talk about Ms. Damoff thinks that somebody said this, or Ms. Dancho said somebody said this, or I think somebody said this, or heaven forbid, Mr. Chair, you think somebody said this. We can have them here. There's a simple solution. They can come in front of this committee, and they can explain themselves. It's as simple as that. And I call on my colleagues across the aisle. I understand some have experience in the police force. I call on them to understand that the importance of not hearing what they wrote in a public statement or what they said to the media, or even reading the transcripts. Let's have them here and understand. We all know. I was a family doctor for 26 years. Do we have people write in their concerns to me? No. What do? We sit down in front of people. We actually sit with them and we talk to them. My good colleague here was a police officer for many years. What do? They interview people. They don't have them write their statements and think, well, wonder what he meant there. My good colleague across the aisle, another former police officer, same thing, Mr. Chair. They actually have people sit in front of them. They don't get to hide. You don't get to say whatever you want to the media and go on and on and on. When new evidence comes, you re-interview people. It's as simple as that, Mr. Chair. And for my colleagues across the aisle to scoff at the idea that we don't have the time in Parliament to help atone for the misery that 22 lives were taken in an unborn baby, that we don't have the time to do that, that's unconscionable. There's no other word for it. It's unconscionable. And it behooves us as parliamentarians. That's why we're here. I can't even believe that we have to have a debate about this, that my colleagues across the aisle suggest that they're going to vote down having these two witnesses back again. Am I living in an altered universe that we don't have time for these families? I'm beyond words, Mr. Chair. I have no other words other than to implore my colleagues that they need to have due process here, have these witnesses back, and have them questioned once again for what they've said, what the transcripts show, what others have said. Have them have their say. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Mr. Nur Mohammed, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been sitting here listening quietly, and I want to begin what I'm going to say to Mr. Ellis. And, I can't imagine what he and his fellow Nova Scotians have been going through over the course of the last little while. And all I want to say is, you have our sympathies and you have our support in making sure that those families get the justice that they deserve. I had the privilege as a young bureaucrat of working with liberal and conservative governments dealing with victims of terrorism and victims of crime. And one thing that was very important at that time was not to politicize tragedy. And I have to admit, I was almost there in terms of supporting this motion, because I do believe it's important to hear the truth. And I'm sorry that Mr. Ellis has to leave, because I think this is an important point that I'd have liked for him to hear. But, you know, I think it lays bare the point that I want to make, that when comments are made like the cameras aren't going to be on this, it tells you what the agenda is. And that is of concern to me. If the agenda is the truth and the agenda is let's make sure we have the conversation, then it shouldn't matter whether it's a break week or not. It shouldn't matter whether or not the lights of the cameras are shining on it. If the media are concerned about this and it's a real story, the media will find their way to it. And unfortunately, what we have here is people playing politics. And so if that is the case, I cannot see myself supporting this motion, because it is ultimately, I don't think, in the interest of the country to waste time by bringing the minister of the commissioner of the RCMP to rehash exactly what we already know. There is nothing new in that transcript. There is nothing new. And for us to waste the time of Parliament in trying to create space for political opportunism is not okay. That's not what Canadians have asked us to do. What they have asked us to do is to get C-21 done, and to stop wasting time and to stop trying to throw roadblocks in terms of passing a piece of legislation that will present future tragedy.
Thank you, Mr. Nur Mohammed. Is there any further discussion on Madame Dancho's motion as amended? No further discussion? Ms. Dancho, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, we may have discussion amongst the opposition parties, given the importance of this, that we'd like to move a sub-amendment to have this by next Thursday would be the deadline, not the 10th, but sorry, what date is that? I'm sorry, the 3rd? The 3rd. If we have agreement on that, I will move it. I'm moving a sub-amendment that the latest date would be the 3rd. It's now the 10th, moving it, my sub-amendment would mean it's by the 3rd.
We already voted on that sub-amendment and we defeated it.
No, it was amended.
Mr. McGregor made an amendment. Mr. Motts moved for the 3rd.
Okay.
That
Then I will
was
say by the
defeated
4th then, Mr. Chair.
By the 4th.
And my sub-amendment is by the 4th.
It's a distinction without a difference, really. Mr. McGregor, please.
Yeah, no, I understand your position, Chair. You have to look after procedure, but I'm sure if you test the room, you're going to see a majority of members in favor of what's being proposed.
Well, let's do this. So we have dealt with this issue. We can deal it again if we have unanimous consent to do so. Do we have unanimous consent to consider? It's a sub-amendment that's already been dealt with, right?
Or a new amendment, pardon me. Yeah. That's new.
Sorry?
Fourth is a new amendment.
Mr. Clerk, is that not brand new because it's a new day?
It's not really a new amendment because we can't meet on the 4th, right? We have only specified days, so you can,
We don't know if we can meet next week. You're willing to do it to the 10th.
well, there's more chance there. All I'm saying is, Mr. Motts made this sub-amendment. We voted on it. We voted it down. It's problematic for me to re-engage that. I mean, there has been more discussion. I think that's a fair point.
That's a good
If the room wants to vote on, do we have agreement to consider this motion? I don't think we can do this without unanimous consent. Having said that, I'm certainly willing to do my best with the clerk to arrange for this meeting as soon as possible. I mean, I guess one of the points of the whole discussion is finding a time that's going to work for the committee, finding a slot. We know it's extremely difficult to find slots for committee work. So, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Why wouldn't we be able to meet on the 4th? That's a brand new day. That's not a holiday. It's a new day that we're proposing.
Sorry, what day is the 4th?
Friday.
So it's a brand new day, new amendment. There's been new discussion, as you pointed out rightfully.
I'm torn here. Mr. McGregor, go ahead.
Yeah, I think like Ms. Dancho's reasoning, you said we don't meet on Friday, we don't meet on Monday, but we're meeting today. So like by her logic, like she's just proposing a different day, and I think it's by the 4th.
We got lucky today. I should point that out again and again. Ms. Dancho. Mr. Muff, I apologize. I'm getting confused.
No,
I'll
that's
get
okay.
myself straightened out here just a minute.
That's okay. I guess I would ask if the opposition parties agree to having additional resources made available, particularly during the break week. No, we shouldn't call it break week because it's not a break. It's a constituency week. And I don't know about other people, but I'm just as busy during those weeks as I am when I'm in Ottawa. It's just a different kind of busy. But if everyone is in agreement for additional resources to be made available during that constituency week so that we can, if we're not dealing with the motion, if it passes, that we're dealing with C21 that week.
I'm not sure this gets me out of my dilemma here. Go ahead, Mr. Shipley.
Thank you. And I'm back in now because Mr. Ellis had to leave, so thank you. I think by the 4th is definitely a new amendment. It's a different date, different day. I don't know how we can say that's not a new amendment. And I think I have a lot of faith in our good chair and clerk here. And I think if you squeeze this one in here today, which kudos to you and doing a great job, that we could probably get something squeezed in and not have to take away from our C21 important work that we're doing, Ms. Dama. None of us are trying to do that whatsoever. That's not in my mind. What we're trying to do is get this dealt with as soon as possible. And I'm hopefully that we can do both in the next 2 weeks. Keep working on our C21 and at the same time squeeze in another meeting as we're talking about to deal with this issue that's pressing and pertinent now.
Let me say that if we can arrange a meeting on that Friday, I'm by the Friday.
That's 2 weeks.
So by the Friday, but not on the Friday?
Well, by or on it, by
So
the end of that day.
If
By the end of
we
that
could
day.
arrange another meeting, I'm happy to do that. And that's within the scope of the amendment as we've already undertaken it. Quite happy to do that. We're working with the House Administration and what resources available. As I mentioned, for 2 weeks, I've been trying to get some more time for C21 on Thursdays. And we got turned down, right? We only got this because Foreign Affairs canceled their meeting. And then they wanted it back, but we already had it, so they couldn't get it back. So House resources are extraordinarily tight. I think Mr. Shipley is Irish. I think he's got a bit of the Blarney there. He complimented the chair, and that's always good. Yeah. So I will accept that the 4th is a different date, and we can vote on that. I'm kind of reluctant. I think it's already encompassed with what we've already agreed to, but if we want to vote on that, let's vote on that sub amendment. So are we clear on Mr. Shipley's sub amendment? We are. Are we all clear on Mr. Shipley's sub amendment? Mr. Nurmahabit, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I just want to get clarification on something from Mr. Shipley? I just want to make sure that we are doing this and we are all committed to ensuring that we are not delaying C21, that we're going to stick to the timelines to get C21 done as quickly as possible, right? I mean, if we have that, that's an important commitment personally for me to hear. And, you know, I trust my friend, Mr. Shipley, completely when he says that. So I just want to make sure that is the sense of the room before I said I'm going to vote.
Okay, so we have now the Mr. Shipley's.
Well, can I answer that then?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I have no intentions whatsoever delaying C21. I think we're a good enough working group here to get both done in the next 2 weeks. Plus, as my colleague just said, it's right in the motion that if we had to find extra time for 21, if we had to bounce that, we will. But not my intention
All
at
right.
all, Mr.
So
Norman.
are we all now clear on Mr. Shipley's sub amendment, which is to change the honor before after the 27th, but honor before the 4th of November, correct? Instead of the 10th. Are we okay? So I think we should probably call a roll on this vote as well. I'm sorry? Yeah.
So Ms. Damov. Mr. Chen,
Yes.
Mr. Noor Mohammed, Mr. Noor Mohammed. He says yes. So Monsieur Shifke,
Yes, I couldn't come off mute. Sorry. Yes.
Mr. Van Banen,
Yes.
Ms. Dancho,
Yes.
Mr. Matz,
Yes.
Mr. Shipley,
Yes.
Mr. Perkins,
Yes.
Madame Michaud,
En faveur.
Mr. McGregor.
Okay, passes. Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I have another amendment, Chair.
Yes?
At the end of the, sorry, I need my glasses. And the previously scheduled witnesses for C21 be added to an additional meeting for the C21 study, comma, including during the week of November 7th, if necessary. So if we need to meet during the break week to add the meeting for C21, that we're going to commit to do it. So adding an additional meeting for the C21 study, including during the week of November 7th, if necessary. So if you can't get an extra meeting, Chair, we're going to have to come in during the constituency week.
Are we clear on that sub-amendment or on that amendment? I'm not sure where we're at amendment, sub-amendment anymore. I think we're at an amendment now, so.
So I just want to clarify, we'd like to be, I believe we need to meet in person, and for me to get back and forth, as long as we have it that week and it's not on the 10th, because I can't get back to deal with my veterans issues in my riding unless I leave sometime during the early days of the 10th. So Monday to Thursday or Monday to Wednesday is fine. Thursday, I can't make it back in time. So we leave that to the clerk. I'm
You
only
can get
saying that the
subs,
clerk.
Glenn. That's why you can get subs. I mean, it's up to the chair to see what and work with the clerk.
Yes, and that's all
Right?
I'm saying. That's more for the clerk's attention.
Well, whenever the meetings are, I mean, all members have the option of attending in person or remotely, according to the House motion of whatever, right? So if it's during the break week, probably I will be online, probably. It's a lot easier if we're all online than if part of us are online, but anyway. So are we all clear with Ms. Damoff's amendment? So the motion as it stands is as Ms. Dancho presented it, modified Mr. McGregor, modified by Ms. Dancho, or Ms. Michaud, modified Mr. Shipley, and now is being modified by Ms. Damoff to add that,
Including during the week of November 4th, if necessary.
okay. All right, so let's call a
Yep,
roll on
Mr.
that. Go
Just
ahead.
another point of order.
Yes?
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure how the microphones are working there, but I'm not hearing the votes as they're being called out.
Okay, well, we'll ask people to shout them out.
Point of
Okay,
order, Chair, sorry, November
will
7th. I
answer
think I
that.
said November 4th, including the week of November 7th, if necessary.
Right, okay. Okay, please call the roll.
Ms. Damoff.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Chan.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Noor Mohammed.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Van Banen.
Yes.
Monsieur Shifke.
Oui.
Ms. Dancho.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Matz.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Shipley.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Perkins.
Yes.
Yes. Madame Michaud.
Oui.
Oui. Mr. McGregor.
Yes.
Yes. All in favor.
That's fairly convincing. Okay, so now we're back to the main motion as amended. So is there any further discussion on the, okay, so we're all clear what we're voting on now? Okay, and in that case, I will call call the, ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Ms. Damoff?
No?
No. Mr. Chan?
Oh,
No. Mr. Noor Mohammed?
Nope.
Monsieur Chifke?
No.
No. Mr. Van Bynen?
No.
Ms. Dancho?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Mutz?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Shipley?
yes.
Yes. Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Madame Michaud?
Oui.
Oui. Mr. McGregor?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes. Mr. McGregor.
Thank you, Chair. I want to take this opportunity to move another motion which was given notice on Friday. The clerk is about to distribute it. This also has to deal with the subject of conflicting testimony that was given at this committee in March of this year versus what was given at the commission. So I'm going to read it out. The motion is as follows: that the chair, on behalf of the committee, contact the Ontario Provincial Police, demanding an immediate response regarding their testimony before the committee on March 24th, 2022, where they identified possible security threats in relation to the Freedom Convoy, which runs in apparent contradiction to their testimony before the Public Order Emergency Commission on October 19th, 2022. And I won't take much time, Mr. Chair, but on March 24th, during my final 2.5 minutes, I asked Ottawa Chief of Police, Interim Chief of Police Bell, I said, quote, at the time, did you feel that it was a national security threat when you received those assessments? Did your police officers feel that that was a viable national security threat? Chief Bell referenced intelligence experts, and then he said he was going to defer the question to OPP Commissioner Thomas Carrick. OPP Commissioner Thomas Carrick answered, thank you, Chief Bell. Through you, Mr. Chair, we did identify it as a threat to national security through the Provincial Operations Intelligence Bureau on or about February 7th. He repeated that same answer in a reply to Mr. Samir Zuberi, who was a member of our committee at that time, and he did again reiterate that they identified it collectively as a risk to national security. Mr. Chair, if you contrast that with one of the commissioner's deputies who on October 19th asserted that that it was not a direct threat to national security. So I'm quite troubled that the very same police force is giving one answer to the Public Order Commission, but a completely different answer earlier the year to a committee of the House of Commons. And I think that through you, Mr. Chair, this committee has to empower you to seek clarification on why those two wildly different testimonies were given. So I will end there, and I hope I can gain support from my colleagues for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. It seems to be in order. It is so moved. So is there any discussion on this motion? Seeing no discussion, I will let us have a vote on it. Do we need a roll call vote? Okay, roll call vote. Go ahead.
Ms. Damoff? Yes. Yes. Mr. Chan?
Yes.
Mr. Noor Mohammed?
Yes.
Monsieur Chifke?
Oui.
Mr. Van Bynen?
Mr. Van Bynen?
Can't hear.
Miss, it's for voting. So, Mr. Van Bynen, your decision?
I'm voting yes.
Yes. Ms. Henshaw?
Oh, yes.
Mr. Mutz?
Yes.
Mr. Shipley?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Perkins?
Oui.
Madame Michaud?
Oui.
Oui. Mr. McGregor?
Yes.
All in favor?
Carries, and I was counting on some amendments and sub-amendments.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Van Bynen, go ahead.
thank you. Mr. Chair, I'd like to reintroduce the motion I put forward on Thursday, October the 6th. Do you want me to read the motion again? Or it's a matter of record already and notice has been provided?
Well, I think it'd be best if you read it so we're all clear on what it
Okay.
is. So,
That pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee takes up a study to review emergency preparedness with respect to extreme weather hazards, including but not limited to floods, forest fires, ice, snowstorms, and hurricanes, and that the study include a review of critical infrastructure at high risk from these events, what all levels of governments are doing to mitigate these risks, and what response and recovery capacity is in place when disasters do occur, including a review of roles, responsibilities, and processes to activate response mechanisms. The study includes at least 4 meetings that the committee invite the President of the King's Privy Council and the Minister of Emergency Preparedness to appear and other witnesses as requested by the committee, and that this committee report its findings to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the government table a comprehensive response thereto.
the motion is in order. I will note to the committee that there's no deadline or time specified for when to have it. So it would be something, if this passes, it'd be something. We have a number of things on the table. We will have to try and juggle it as best we can. And if this passes, I would ask that all members submit witness lists so that we can ask our. Anyway, I'm trying not to speak to the motion, but anyway, any discussion?
Just briefly, that was part of my question was there, I didn't catch if there was a date, but you're saying there's no specific date. So certainly if it passes, then it's up, it'll be happening. We just haven't decided when, because my concern is earlier this fall, we talked about reviewing what happened, the mass killing in Saskatchewan. And I think that is still very present, and the investigation continues. But I think the committee agreed that was a pressing issue. There was a bit of disagreement on whether we would wait until the inquiry for that is over or not. But I just want to reiterate that certainly is the Conservative priority. And I know there are a few other parties who are also interested in studying it as soon as we conclude C21, or as soon as possible, given that I think we'd all like to prevent that from happening before. And I think it's the duty of our committee to ensure that it is the priority. But certainly this motion, I think it really actually originated in part from the former Conservative member for this committee, Teiko Venpapta, who's no longer on this committee, but a very hardworking member. So we are pleased with the motion overall.
Thank you. And I think we may have to have a subcommittee meeting down the road to sort out some of this stuff. So is there any further discussion on this motion? Mr. Nur Mohammed, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, in the spirit of my fellow British Columbian, the Conservative member who had originally had this idea, I think it's a very important motion for us to get into. The one thing that I would suggest, if we are open to this during the course of the conversation about this, is to include some provision for travel. I think there's a lot we can learn from what has happened in Japan and in New Orleans, what has worked well, what has not worked well, so that we can see firsthand the long-term impacts of either good planning or poor planning. And, frankly, it may be too soon for us to travel to Atlantic Canada to see what has happened post-Fiona, but I do think it's important for us to learn lessons from other parts of the world to bring best practice to Canada where possible. I don't know how others feel about that, but I do think it may be worthy of consideration.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Nur Mohammed. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let us have a vote on this wonderful motion. Do we need a roll?
I think it's easier for Tony.
I'm sorry?
I think Tony was having trouble hearing us, so maybe ask him if he wants a roll call or if we all agree.
If there's unanimous consent, I'm delighted with that, but I haven't heard, I haven't been able to hear the microphones very effectively. It might be all this Beatle music in the background.
Well, let us see if we have an agreement. Do we have agreement on this? I see agreement around the table, so I'll consider that a unanimous agreement. So thank you, Mr. Van Bynen.
Thank you.
Is there any further business for us at this time? Seeing none, thank you all for your time and for your diligence in pursuing matters of great passion and concern. And with that, we are now adjourned.
I don't know. I don't think my microphone is working. Is my microphone working? No. Microphone working? Not working. No audio. Oh, it's working? Okay. Good. Working. Wonder what was happening earlier. Strange. Oh, nothing new will be learned. No, we can't have those people around. There's nothing new learned. Really? And you notice how they were just oh God, that was sick. That, you know, conservatives that are in there and they're like, oh yeah, we don't want to, stall anything or cause any kind of problems, any hold up on they're not conservative. Not that it's even about politics, it's not. But you can see the quote rhinos, right? The Republican name only. Rhino. Yeah, no, these people aren't conservative. They have the same agenda and they just push it. And this was built on, not that I believe that again is the root cause, but it's interesting that has come out. Obviously, interesting. Some funny things happening with my computer. The gun nonsense. We're talking about what is making sound? No, something's making sound. Gun legislation is just it. If you go through the emails, I did a series of tweets, and if you go through the emails from Lucky, it is very apparent. They're talking about timelines and maps and a map. April 18, 19. They don't give a good goddamn about there's a lot of push in the emails from Lucky about guns, anxiously awaiting government of Canada. And, nothing really, there is some discussion about the map and the timelines, but it's not about that. It's about the guns. The map and the timeline, they kind of come off later, somewhere down the road, I think later that night. It's not about that. They didn't care. Go back to why is nobody else acknowledging back here? Let's see if I got that right. Okay. We got Bergerman sitting up here.
The evening before the April 28th press conference and a subsequent meeting with Commissioner Lucky. Did I hear you correct? There was a meeting the night before.
I want to thank you, Chair.
What is making noise? Just one moment.
For us to meet today, so that we didn't have to lose a meeting on our study.
Okay, sorry. I'm watching other things, I think. Okay. No.
She would have been dealing with our colleagues in communications and public safety.
Okay, thank you. Ms.
You're
Ms. Bergerman and Mr. Leather, thank you for being here. And thank you, Ms. Tessier, for being here. Ms. Bergerman, you mentioned a meeting that happened the evening before the April 28th press conference and a subsequent meeting with Commissioner Lucky. Did I hear you correct? There was a meeting the night before?
I'm not aware of a meeting.
I misheard you. I'm going to ask you a few questions just in response to Leah Scanlon and Darren Campbell's notes and letter. Leah Scanlon also mentioned to the MCC in an interview that the Prime Minister and Minister Blair were, quote, were weighing in on what we could and couldn't say. Was that your experience?
Only on this particular phone call that we had on the 28th, that there was a reference to the minister putting pressure on the commissioner.
So according to your, and you think you're referencing what Leah Scanlon had also referenced, that the commissioner indicated Minister Blair pressured her to release this information. Was that what you heard from Commissioner Lucky as well?
I heard minister. I don't recall hearing Minister Blair.
And what did Commissioner Lucky say about the minister, that some minister had pressured her to release the information about the weapons used in the attack?
The conversation was we didn't understand the big picture, and that there was pressure from the minister to release the caliber and the make and models of the weapons used in the mass casualty.
So you would agree with Darren Campbell's notes that Commissioner Lucky, the words he used was promised Minister Blair and the Prime Minister's office that that information would be released?
Yes.
So you heard the commissioner say she promised the minister and the Prime Minister's office? Yes. And
What? Promised. Promised. Political interference. The RCMP is rife with corruption. Police services in general, there are people amongst them, but the RCMP is notoriously bad. Look back at SNC Lavalin and, I don't know, Raybould. No political corruption there. Aga Khan investigations. No political corruption there going on. This is a ongoing issue with governments in power utilizing the RCMP, and I think in turn the RCMP using the governments in power. So it's kind of a cooperative relationship that they've got going there.
And did the Commissioner Lucky directly tie that to the forthcoming firearm policy from the Liberal government?
Yes.
She did. So she said the pressure was from the minister and the Prime Minister's office, that she had promised them that that information would be released. And the pressure was a result of it being tied to the forthcoming gun policy from the Liberal government. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I don't know how much clearer you can be. People are lying, like, badly. And we're employing these people, and 23 people paid. Now, I don't know where Mr. Ellis, honestly, sorry, I don't want to switch topics, but I don't know where Mr. Ellis sits, but I'll tell you, I never fucking heard a word from him until very recently. So I don't know whether virtue signaling going on there, where he's like, oh, it's in my writing. I remember he stands up in the House of Commons during question period when this just started to surface, and he's like, oh, this was in my writing. And the people who wear the fucking tartan, they bring that out. All of a sudden they're wearing tartan, and I'm like, you guys didn't care. Don't even mention it. It has nothing to do with the 23. To these people, they don't care. It's very clear. Blair lied, out and out lied. There's proof. There's not, it's not questionable. There's proof. So then you have like Mohammed up there sitting and saying, oh, well, or I forget the other Dizzo's name. What is her name? Pam Damoff. Oh, we're not learning anything new. We're not learning anything new here. Oh, okay. Well, not to you, but frankly, a lot of Canadians actually believe that, maybe their minister might kind of be telling the truth. Maybe that the RCMP and the party in power aren't working together. Maybe, there is really a serious problem with guns and they must be got off the street. Maybe that the Mass Casualty Commission is very interested in acquiring the truth. And that's not to say that there isn't people within the Mass Casualty Commission who are working hard to acquire the truth, because there are, but they're outnumbered by corrupt people. Corruption is across all the gamuts here. So when NS44 says, things may be coming to light, maybe, I don't know. I would say yes. There are going to be some more things that come to light. Right? I put out a tweet today, unrelated, but I put out a tweet today, just something to ponder. Do you think that maybe Dan Breen, the person who had the tapes, the ones that were, what was it, deleted? According to Assistant Commissioner Brannon, they were deleted. Deputy Commissioner Brannon. They were deleted. Assistant Deputy. I'm sorry, I'm confused. Deleted. And then it's a device that was no longer anybody had. Anyways, whichever that is. Of course, that doesn't align. The tapes. Do you think that possibly, just possibly, Dan Breen may have gotten in trouble as a result? How did the tapes ever originally surface? That would be a very interesting question, because I've dug through a lot of things. I can't seem to find where the tapes are yet. Does anybody know? They found anything? Somehow the tapes surface. Yeah, with the O drives. O drives, if it's in Nova Scotia's case, what do we have? The S drives and the N drives, I think. Oof. All the secret drives. But somebody dumped those or leaked the fact that they existed. Which again may even serve just as somewhat of a distraction. All this may be distracting from other things, which is possible, but it does happen to be true. And gun legislation tied to this, and I'm not I have my views. I don't think that people should be not permitted to own a firearm if you've gone through the vetting process and you're legally entitled to own a gun. I don't see why you shouldn't be allowed to own a gun. And it's very true. I was reviewing some other stuff, and I'm going to put some more things up. So I have a SECU meeting that I never put out before from 2 months ago, maybe, prior to this. And what's the other one here? Maybe we can play that one. Where's that? Brenda Lucky. How about this? While I'm looking, we can watch this just for kind of a laugh. Is it here? Wait a second. Yeah, right here. I think I've got it queued up. The mats. Remember, I've talked about the. Oops, sorry, that shouldn't be that way. It should be this one. The mats. The racist mats. The mat test. Oh. This is actually quite, it goes back, you can go back through some earlier stuff. And Brenda's like, well, we don't have a systemic racism problem within the RCMP. Well, that's true. The problem is that there are racists in the RCMP, and then they don't root them out. That doesn't mean that it's systemically racist. There are racist people who should be fired and probably charged if they want to do those things, investigated anyway. Anyway, this is Brenda on her example of racism. Racist.
Mr. Fergus, 5 minutes, please. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very kind of you of giving me this opportunity to ask a question. Thank you, Madam Commissioner. It's a pleasure to have you here today. First of all, I would like to say that I recognize the work, the difficult work in the RCMP that all the members do on a daily basis. It's not easy to be a police officer. It's not easy to have the attention drawn to exceptions. And I understand that it's very difficult. However, it is the burden that you and all the members of the RCMP have to take on, and it is part of the attention that is thrown upon you right now. Now, I can't answer the question from Mr. Saint-Marine, but I was also confused by your definition of systemic racism. When this question was asked of you at the beginning of June, I sincerely believe that people can change, and we have to give them the opportunity to evolve, to change. So congratulations. But to come back to Mrs. Michel's question, I'd like to once again get your definition of systemic racism, because you said, and you've introduced a notion of length. You talked about the history of the RCMP, and you recognize that there was systemic racism. Do you believe that there is systemic racism today in the RCMP?
Thank you for your question. And first, thank you for your appreciation for our members, because it means a lot.
Fill it up.
They're working hard each day in the communities.
Move along.
They serve in. Yes, there's absolutely systemic racism. I can give you a couple of examples that we've found over the years. For example, we have a physical abilities a requirement evaluation. It's an obstacle course. In there, there's a 6-foot mat that you have to do a broad jump. And when we put the lens on it and reviewed that physical requirements test, evidence told us that the average person can broad jump their height. So, of course, how many 6-foot people do we hire? And there are people in all different cultures that may not be 6 feet, including there's not a lot of women that are 6 feet tall that would not be able to get through that type of test.
Be systemic discrimination, but I'm trying to think of systemic racism.
In our, we have some questions, for example, in our aptitude test. And you know what, I might refer Gail, because that is Gail's specialty in the HR world, because a lot of it has been brought out in our recruiting process. So I'll ask Gail if she can.
Can you save me? please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the question.
Please, derp. Oh, come in, Gail, and save the day. Where is it?
Systemic racism.
In our, that we have some questions, for example, in our aptitude test. And you know what, I might refer Gail because that is Gail's specialty in the HR world, because a lot of it has been brought out in our recruiting process. So I'll ask Gail if she can.
Oh, I got lots of stuff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the question.
Okay, so Gail Johnson, right? Listen, this is Vision 150 stuff. Who's Gail Johnson? I've spoken about Gail Johnson before, right? Now let's hear Gail's explanation.
First, I'd just like to say when we talk about systemic racism, we understand it to mean because of systems that exist in organizations over a long time, they disadvantage certain racialized Indigenous groups. So institutional racism that differentially impacts people. And so we do have some examples. I will say that when we were looking at our recruitment process and what was required for our folks when we tried to recruit people from the north, because of remote locations, the need for driver's license, etc., they had a difficult time actually coming to write the aptitude test, actually having driver's license, and actually coming and leaving to come and sit for the processes we had. We recognized that this was disadvantaging that group. And so we've changed the way we do that process now so that we make it easier, so that we go there and we do certain of the activities there so that we can make sure that they continue to have the opportunity to apply to become police officers.
Well, so now we're having people who don't have driver's licenses or can't drive. That's great. That seems very wise. Becoming police officers. Does any of that make any sense to anybody? Let's see, Matt's, or you don't have a driver's test. So you can't drive to the office. So therefore that's a disadvantage because you've never driven before, or probably then that wouldn't be the best field for you. Up north, who moved up north? Interesting folks move up north, don't they? Oh, don't want any kind of things going on up north. Anyway, Gail, Janga Gail, what was Janga Gail's former job? Well, she used to work sorry. I'm always finding funny stuff. Okay, so here's Gail. Okay. Yeah, this is all interesting. Perhaps she needs to update here because that's no longer. Here she is, ESDC. Now, for those who are following the Nova Scotia story closely, there are a multitude of investigations that are ongoing. There's the Hoyt investigation, which is an internal RCMP investigation. I did a video about I've done different components of it, but I did one particular video about one officer that's involved with the Hoyt stuff. that I had a few questions about. That was banned immediately as soon as I put it on YouTube, because it was another investigation that that officer is tied to that has a lot of difficulties right now, or has for many years. Okay, and then you also have the ESDC. The ESDC investigation is another one that's going on. So you have MCC, you have Hoyt, and you have ESDC. Okay. That's all under the banner of IMT H Strong 2 RCMP. So that's Diamopolis, Santa Suso, who's now got promoted to commanding officer in PEI. And so their issues management team, which is a disaster zone, and one day I hope all of that comes to light in a way that other people can understand it. H Strong 2 issues management team was brought in place on the 23rd of April, I believe, in its early incarnations. Janice Gray, right? John Robin. First it was with Janice. And husband-wife team, right? Solid line straight to Ottawa. They're supposed to be disclosing the information to all of these other investigations going on, right? But you also kind of have somewhat of a bias, being that you're with the RCMP, right? Investigating yourself. So back to Gale and the ESDC connection. Now, do you think it's just possible that that may have come into play, friendships, relationships in amongst this group with the ESDC and investigation? Do you think that might have played a role? Excuse me. Where is the ESDC investigation? Where are all of the details for the ESDC investigation? Are they on the mass casualty website? No. Where is all of the things on the mass casualty website? There are 2 items, I believe, that are in reference to 3 items. 2. There's Gibson's interview and Como's interview, ESDC, and Vicky Colford's. I think those are the 3. Definitely Gibson and Colford, I believe. Now, those are officers that gave their permission to disclose, like you can give permission in this type of a situation, in an investigation. This is just as Bjorn's statement. Don't worry about it. You can use the Sharpie on anything that you want to. Really now? Really? Before it goes into archives, you can use the Sharpie. No, that's not how investigations are done. It's called full disclosure on all of it. So I have a feeling, given the limited information that has come forth about the ESDC investigation and the Hoyt investigation, both of which are not completed. None of the investigations, funnily enough, that the RCMP have been completed. That was asked in the MCC, right? The ESDC stuff, well, there may be some real good things in there. Where is that? Remember, we're talking about a dead man. I digress. I was out for the weekend. Otherwise, I would have put out more stuff. Where's that? Actually, I want to keep that window open. One moment. Might as well pass it off, though, to Gail, because Brenda can't answer. About what is systemic racism? All of them backtrack. It's funny. Because they know the truth, right? The truth is that you have racists in amongst everything, which is totally true. And it is imperative that you weed racists out. You don't just blanket everybody, because then that just negatively impacts people who aren't racist, say officers who aren't racist. You might as well just paint them as racist too. That doesn't make any sense. The origins of the RCMP, that's a different story. But when I was out doing what I had to do this weekend, and I've talked about this before, the billboards that we have here in Alberta. And I didn't get a picture of the last one. There you go. New one. I just came across it like, oh, 160 million reasons to keep Alberta RCMP. Now, people don't need to be told if something is good, do they? They just kind of inherently know about it. You don't actually have to advertise. Pay money. Whose money is that that's being paid? So if they're doing they're giving poor service, which, by the way, it's slightly more than poor service in many places. It's actually contractually, legally, they're not holding up their end. Okay, so you're getting really screwed. You have to pay for it, and you don't get the service. And then they're going to tell you, but you got to also pay for the advertising to make sure that we tell you that you want to stay. You want that in there, even though it's not working at all. Right. It's just like those sock accounts all over the place. With all the sock information. Whether it be, do I have some of those open? I'm sure. And one only needs to use a little bit of critical thinking on some of this. It's not real hard, I wouldn't think. Okay, so you go say here. What's this? Okay, does it look familiar? Same kind of goop. 9.5 thousand followers. Brought to you by NPF. Of course, they've got their, look at how much they're putting into this. All these infographics and crap. The same studies that they keep using. This was, I believe they had the one, was it Fahey? Was it Fahey? I get the two confused. RCMP keep Nova Scotians safe. RCMP for Nova Scotians. Nova Scotians are satisfied with RCMP. More funding, better policing. Come on now. Come on. Our Appreciation Day. Keep Nova Scotians safe. Do you know? Like, look at this trash. Okay, so if you look at that, oh, here's the dash cams. What is that again? Watch guard? Watch guard? I put that out in a series of tweets too. Where's that? Sorry, I bounce all over the place, but that's just me. I can't believe we're on the road again. I was making a little video this morning, and that's what I had, like the billboard with Willie Nelson on the road again. Do. Stuck in my head now. Okay, so oh, the dash cam. What about those dash cams? Do you ever hear about anything about the dash cams? You know? Oh no, there's no such thing. No. Yeah, really. It's only used in certain investigations. The only reason I mention that is because of this, like, what do you think the picture's from? Thank goodness the officer was not hurt. Thank goodness. But what do you think the white hood here is from? Could that be a cruiser? Could it be that they have dash cams? You know, like I was talking about a long time ago. Got kind of poo-pooed by certain people about that. Huh. Why would it be in certain investigations then, prior to November? Or sorry, prior to April 2020. Confusing. Watch guard. Which model did they use again? They're in-car video systems have been used since the early 90s. There are over 2,500 police vehicles equipped with cameras. And of course, there's no dash cam footage from anywhere in Nova Scotia for April 1819. How many answers do you think you might have in respect to what happened down there if you had the dash cam footage? Would you be able to align that with, like, say, the 911 logs, which then you could align with the GPS logs, and all of it would kind of fall into place conveniently, the some that they've given you? What was it? Oh, no, we don't have GPS. TMR2, total sham. They sold to people on that one too. Yeah, what is it? The watch guard system, I think they were using. Here we go. The watch guard application. I think I even have a model number on what they're using. Where's that? Oh no, we don't have any of that. Don't worry, it's all archived, so might as well, try and delete and stuff. A WatchGuard 4.3E, that's what they're using. are racist like Jim has, they turn, yes, that's right. It only seems to come out, like in W5 investigations or CERT investigation. But then, when push comes to shove, and it's actually really important to have them come out, well, they're like the tapes. What are you talking about? We don't have that. We deleted that. We were too busy with the DEOC bus, eating sandwiches. Now, I did do, we can play that. Where was that? Question period from Friday. So I cut out all of the useless goop. I probably should stick these things up as separate stuff, right? Because they fill it full of the honorable member. They fill it full of lots of shit. But there's a lot of shit going on, and that's just the truth. Like, the country is in total disarray. Things cost lots of money. Everybody knows that. You got the trucker stuff. You've got dishonesty going on multitude of levels, provable. Anyway, this is just the stuff to do with what Dancho said, Raquel Dancho, who is clearly doing a great job from everything I've observed, unlike certain other people in that group over there in the
honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Madam Speaker, yesterday at the Public Safety Committee, Edmonton Police Chief Dale McPhee said that the Liberals' handgun freeze is not only a bad idea, but will undermine public safety by increasing smuggling and black market activity. He said instead the focus ought to be on targeting the criminals who pull the trigger. Chief McPhee's approach is in stark contrast to the Liberals' approach, with their soft on crime, do no time Bill C5 that eliminates mandatory jail time for serious gun crime. This all the while the Liberals target law-abiding firearms owners with not only a useless but potentially harmful handgun freeze. The Liberals should heed the advice of Chief McPhee, go after the criminals, and leave law-abiding firearms owners alone.
Member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Madam Speaker, yesterday recordings were released of the infamous April 28th phone call with RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki and her subordinates. We have been told that these recordings were destroyed, but a partial copy was found. In that recording, the commissioner admits that she was working closely with the Prime Minister and the Minister of Public Safety to release confidential information on an active investigation into the Nova Scotia mass shooting. Earlier this summer, Commissioner Lucki testified to Parliament that, quote, she was not directed to publicly release information about weapons used by the perpetrator to help advance pending gun control legislation. The recordings contradict her testimony. In fact, she admitted that the minister's office requested her to release this information. She admitted that she needed to apologize to the Prime Minister and the minister because she failed to get this information released. Political interference into the RCMP investigation by this government and the commissioner are unacceptable. It's time for accountability. When can we expect a resignation?
Now that fellow sits on the SECU. He sits on the committee. I didn't see him today, but or if I did, I missed it. But he's asked some very good questions too.
The honourable member, oral questions, questions orales. L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
The Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
On a entendu.
Yesterday, we heard the recording of a phone call. It revealed that the RCMP commissioner was experiencing political pressure, not only from the Minister of Emergency Preparedness, but the Prime Minister himself. When it came to the inquiry in the largest mass shooting in Canada's history, 22 people were killed. It also contradicts Statements made in the House about,
Is 23, Pierre.
from the Minister of Emergency Preparedness. Will he resign? The Honorable.
Okay, so get ready for the broken record because you'll hear certain things over and over. I think his page only basically has a few lines and he kind of just keeps reading them.
Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, please allow me to express again our most sincere condolences.
Act of violence insolable.
It was an odious act of violence. I am keeping all of the victims in mind.
Okay, so you know that's a lie because he's not doing anything. He doesn't care. He obviously has to read it off a page and never been there, never has anything to do with it. These people, and I sadly, I obviously missed the one response there, but he's repeating the same stuff. It will go, he will keep doing it though. It's just a broken record.
A clear principle of our democracy is that our government respects the law and did not interfere in a police investigation.
Of the opposition. Well, the Minister of Emergency Preparedness said, quote, "At no point did our government pressure or interfere with the operational decisions of the RCMP, including their communication strategy." Yet, only 10 days after the biggest mass shooting in Canadian history, the Commissioner of the RCMP was recorded saying, "It was a request that I got from the Minister's office." Ooh. Furthermore, she said she was waiting for a call from the Prime Minister so that she could apologize for not having released the information that the politicians wanted out. They wanted this information out so that they could advance their partisan agenda. Will they resign?
The Honorable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam President, the member opposite knows really well that one of the most fundamental principles of our democracy is that politicians do not interfere in police investigations or police operations. Let me be absolutely clear. We find...
Okay, so that's, thank you for telling people it's kind of fundamental. Really now? I didn't know.
We believe that that is a sacrosanct principle of our democracy, and at no moment ever our government has ever interfered in police investigation or police operation, nor we will ever do so.
And you believe that it's sacrosanct? Well, is there anybody who doesn't? You want to get on with it?
Thank you.
The Honorable Leader of the Opposition. And yet a recording from the Commissioner of the RCMP shows that that is exactly what they did. It was, quote, "It was a request that I got from the Minister's office." And I shared with the Minister that that it was in fact going to be in the release, and it wasn't. I'm now sitting on a request in my phone that the Minister wants to speak with me. She says further, "I'm waiting for a call from the Prime Minister so that I can apologize for not releasing sensitive investigative information to advance the Minister wants to speak with me." She says further, "I'm waiting for a call from the Prime Minister so that I can apologize for not releasing sensitive investigative information to advance the Liberal Party's partisan agenda."
Apologize. I think we should be looking a little higher than Drunky Blair and Lucky, like a lot higher.
With this revelation of falsehood stated by this minister in this House, will he resign?
The Honorable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, let me repeat once again, at no point did our government attempt to direct or otherwise interfere with police operations. Let me quote what Commissioner herself stated through testimony to parliamentarians, and I quote, "Let me be clear. I did not interfere in the investigation. I did not receive direction, and I was not influenced by government officials regarding the public release of information, and more importantly, on the direction of the investigation. I ensured that operational independence was maintained in all my interactions with government as I do today." This is a direct quote from the
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Okay, and so what is that, discounting Bergerman sitting there and saying that she heard it all? Is that discounting Leather? Is that discounting Campbell? Is that discounting Lucky's own emails? Anxiously awaiting? So did she lie to the MCC? Did Blair lie to SEU committee? Did it? Or you just want to repeat the lie? Odd. Okay.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Another quote in a recorded conversation. So she too has stated one thing here and the opposite there.
The Honourable Member for Sturgeon River Park.
Madam Speaker, the Minister of Emergency Preparedness repeatedly told this House that, quote, at no point did our government pressure or interfere in the operational decisions of the RCMP, including their communications strategy. Audio recordings of Commissioner Lucky state, quote, it was the request that I got from the minister's office, and I shared with the minister that it was going to be in the news release, and it wasn't. The minister directly interfered in an RCMP investigation for the purpose of advancing their political agenda. When will the minister resign for misleading Parliament?
What about his assistant too there that was at committee?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Deputy.
Madam Speaker, the members opposite can ask the same question as many different ways as possible. The answer remains the same. That in our democracy,
it's sacrosanct.
In our democracy, one of the fundamental principles is that the government does not interfere in any police operation or police investigation.
The Honourable Member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Madam Speaker, Commissioner Lucky told Parliament that, quote, she was not directed to publicly release information about weapons used to help advance pending gun control legislation. But we now have audio recordings where the commissioner states, quote, does anyone know what's going on with the world of guns? They're trying to get legislation going. The commissioner pressured her subordinates under direction from the minister to advance the government's political agenda. In her own words, quote, she didn't come through for the minister.
Keep in mind, and this is an important one, the tapes are only a snippet of what was said. Do remember, I believe it's Campbell doesn't specifically say, but I think it can be inferred that Leah Scanlon left in tears. This is how hard she was going on them. We get the little nice snippet, watered down. She was railing on them at the end. We don't get that part because you only get about 20 some odd minutes of an hour-long call. Dan Breen, smart, people do this. That's the way it works in this world. You got to have your ass covered. Remember, McNeil, have people in the room with you, right? So that they can't come back and say something else. Or you make a recording of something. Or you make notes, in Campbell's case, right? That then you can slip forward. How many more notes do you think you might see? Pages of notes that are going to start surfacing. Think it's possible?
The commissioner misled Parliament. When will the government demand her resignation?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, I do want to again stress the fact that the commissioner testified to parliamentarians at a committee in July where she said that I did not receive direction and I was not influenced by government officials regarding the public release of information.
So you're just going to keep repeating the one person who's now considered not telling the truth. So you're just going to keep repeating the lie? That seems good. That seems like you're not lying at all. You can't have anything else to fall back on, but there's a ton of evidence that disputes what you say.
Speaker, she's stating exactly the practice, which is politicians do not interfere in police operation or police investigations. Our government abides by that really important principle, and at no time did the government interfere in a police investigation?
That is all.
Keep lifting moral ethics and morals that, of course, everybody has. Keep repeating those. Keep bashing people over the head and numbing them down with it. No. If that's all you can repeat, then you're a retardo. You repeat a lie and you tell people the obvious. We should tell the truth. Yeah, good. And we don't interfere. No, there's nothing going on over with the trucker convoy. There's nothing that has been happening in the past with the SNC Lavalin situation. There's nothing that happened with Aga Khan times 2, times 3. Bell Island. Get out of here. This is the most dishonest, corrupt group, and it's just rife in our society. And this is what we've got. People in supposedly representing us, supposedly policing us. And then they want to come in and take everything away from people who are legal gun owners or good people. You want to step all over 23 so you can get whatever it is that you want. You didn't give a shit about 23. You never did. And you've wasted in excess of $100 million to try and cover up all of your lying, which we're only seeing slightly the corruption and what was the true motivation starting to come out.
All the time for oral questions. I believe the honourable member for Regina Capel is rising on this point of order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am rising on a question of privilege today concerning misleading comments made in this House by the Minister of Emergency Preparedness. In late June, it came to light in evidence presented at the Mass Casualty Commission that the Liberal government was heavily involved in the RCMP's communications about the April 2020 Nova Scotia tragedy, which, as things would turn out.
And who was heavily involved in the mass casualty? IMT Strong, too. RCMP. It's all the same. All the same. Not to say that there aren't good players, because there are a few, but they're far and few between.
Was followed mere days by a firearms announcement by the Prime Minister on May 1st, 2020.
How convenient.
That involvement came to a head in a hastily arranged teleconference between RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki, other top brass at RCMP headquarters, and several Nova Scotia RCMP members, where those Nova Scotia officials were called out on the carpet. Contemporaneous notes of that teleconference taken by Superintendent Darren Campbell, well trained in documenting conversations as any veteran police officer would be, recorded that Commissioner Lucki spoke about a promise she had made to the minister and had linked its importance to that forthcoming Order in Council announcement. Understandably, the former Minister of Public Safety was vigorously questioned about those events here in the House. On June 21st, he said, at page 7094 of the debates, quote, "No direction on any operational matter was given to the Commissioner of the RCMP by me or any member of this government," end quote. The following day, the minister said at page 7140 of the debates, quote, "At no point did our government pressure or interfere with the operational decisions of the RCMP, including their communications strategy," end quote. Then on the last day of the spring sitting, June 23rd, he added at page 7242 of the debates, quote, "Neither the Prime Minister's office nor the Minister of Public Safety's office had any role in interfering or pressuring the RCMP to make any operational decisions with respect to RCMP communications around the investigation."
The lies. The
Standing Committee on
lies.
Public Safety and National Security and the Mass Casualty Commission itself heard from several witnesses over the summer months about their recollections of that teleconference. For his part, the minister doubled down on his own position, saying unequivocally at the committee on July 25th, at page 1 of the evidence, quote, I did not ask them to release any specific information, nor did I receive a promise for them to do so, end quote. Later in the meeting at page 5 of the evidence, the minister reiterated, quote, I did not ask her to release that information. It wasn't required, end quote. In other evidence at the committee and commission, we heard Commissioner Lucky's claim that the minister's chief of staff was curious whether the types of firearms involved would be named in a press conference, and in turn, the RCMP commissioner dutifully inquired whether that would be the case. She asserts she was so informed and passed the information back. When it didn't come to pass, we are supposed to believe that she felt embarrassed for having given the minister wrong information and convened the teleconference with senior Nova Scotia RCMP officials to address the miscommunication. Subsequently, it was revealed that this conference call had been recorded by Dan Bryan, an issues management advisor with the RCMP and a former longtime Liberal staffer, including serving as
former longtime Liberal staffer. But he obviously doesn't think anything funny is going on. That's why he would make a recording. I wonder if he got in trouble. Wonder if they're looking at him in any way. I hope that wouldn't be the case. Though it's happened in the past.
Communications director to the previous public safety minister, Ralph Goodale. Lo and behold, those recordings had gone missing. Nonetheless, they were recovered somehow.
Oh, yeah.
Just yesterday, the recordings of this conversation and transcripts of them were published by the Mass Casualty Commission. That has
important to throw them out there, because they're done. They're writing their final report. The one that they didn't have in the can before, just like the mid-session report, which you can actually prove was written before. All of this is just show. Even some of this is show. It's only when you get caught with your pants down, because there are good players, white hats that run around and do things because they're trying to clean it up, but it's just a swamp of mess everywhere.
Shed a much brighter light on the infamous April 28th, 2020 teleconference. In the transcript titled Audio File 3 of 3, recorded 2020-04-28 at 8:48:57 p.m., the commissioner is quoted at lines 15 to 17 on page 1 as saying, quote, the little one line that I needed to be put into Darren's speaking notes, how did it get to me that one line was going to be in his speaking notes and it wasn't? Keywords there, Madam Speaker, are one line that I needed to be put in. It's pertinent because, as we know, the claim had been made that innocent questions had been asked by or on behalf of the minister. In fact, the commissioner offered this explanation of the minister's interest in this issue in the following exchange with the Liberal member for Fleetwood Port Kells at page 24 of the evidence for the Public Safety Committee's July 25th meeting. Quote, this is the question. A critical piece here is when the question was asked. Was the question asked if it would be disclosed, or did they ask for it to be disclosed? Commissioner Brenda Lucki responds, to my recollection, like I said at the very beginning, it's if the weapons information would be included, end quote. Now, clearly it wasn't mere curiosity whether the guns would be named. It was a line the commissioner needed to be put in, to use her own words. But was it at her own behest or on behalf of someone higher up, Madam Speaker? You must recall that the minister told the House on June 23rd that the government had not played, quote, any role with respect to RCMP communications. Now, turning back to the transcript, I would refer the chair to lines 19 and 20 on page 2. Quote, yet I got hit again, not being able to come through for the minister on the simplest of requests, end quote. Now, lest you might think it's ambiguous from that question whether the commissioner may have been meaning simply to do a big favor for the minister, but this next quote should leave the House with no doubt. I would now cite the transcript titled Audio File 1 of 3, recorded 2020-04-28 at 8:34 p.m. at lines 11 and 12 on page 1. We read the commissioner saying, quote, flew it up the flagpole because it was a request that I got from the minister's office. There we have it, Madam Speaker. The request came from the minister's office. But what was that request? That one line the commissioner needed to have added, you might ask. It was to pre-position, as communications folks would say, for the May 1st, 2020 Liberal Firearms announcement, referring to the transcript title audio file 2 of 3, recorded on 2020-04-28 at 8:42 p.m. We read at lines 10 to 15 on page 2, quote, "Does anybody realize what's going on in the world of handguns and guns right now? The fact that they're in the middle of trying to get legislation going is the key point." That is the quote from that testimony, Madam Speaker, and I'll just read it again very quickly. Does anybody realize what's going on in the world of handguns and guns right now? The fact that they're in the middle of trying to get legislation going. There is the direct link between the government's partisan political agenda and the interference in an active investigation into a tragic shooting that left 22 innocent Canadians dead. The RCMP on the ground had reason not to release that information. The government is putting political pressure on those officers to release that information, which could have jeopardized their ongoing efforts to track the events that led to the tragic shooting. This June, Madam Speaker, the minister asserted that there was no direction, interference, or pressure. If the minister were to come down to the House and say that what I just quoted to you doesn't add up to that, the next quotations I will offer should remove any ambiguity.
But he can't be bothered. Maybe he's at the bar. Yeah. Just like he can't somehow attend meetings, just like they can't somehow find a room, just like they had to spend all this morning or whatever earlier, the live stream, debating what time so that they can ram home legislation that even conservatives, some of them, are in favor of. This is absolutely ridiculous. It has nothing to do. How many of these people do you think? How many of these people do you think, even though they look like they're, doing the right thing? Oh, here's all this stuff. How many do you think would say anything if something didn't get leaked? Do you think you'd see it?
About the nature or tone of that so-called request from the minister's office. Recall that at the July 25th Public Safety Committee meeting, the commissioner tried to brush off the urgency of these details coming out, answering the Liberal member for Fleetwood Port Kells when he asked why it was important that this information be released at page 25 of the evidence. Quote, "It wasn't important whether or not it was released," end quote. The commissioner may have been on message with the minister's own committee statement, but the teleconference recording would prove them both wrong. At lines 31 to 33 of page 2 of the transcript of audio file 3, Commissioner Lucky is documented saying, quote, "I already have a request sitting in my phone that the minister wants to speak with me, and I know exactly what it's going to be about. And I can't even, there's not much I can say except that once again, I dropped the ball. So that's going to be the 4th time I'm going to say to him," end quote. Yet she had already made one apology to the minister about her dropping the ball on pre-positioning for the Liberal gun announcement. At lines 39 to 41 of page 1 of the transcript of audio file 1, the RCMP commissioner says, and I quote, "It's pretty difficult when you have to tell. I have apologized to the minister. I'm waiting for the Prime Minister to call me so I can apologize," end quote. Apologize for what? For not including that information that the Liberal government decided would help them in a partisan way, despite the impact it may have on an ongoing police investigation.
Anxiously awaiting. Anxiously awaiting. One second. Where did I have that? And I think I mapped it out on Friday. One moment. Vida. Okay, so the tapes, right? Then you have Dan. This is coming from about the tapes. To the best of his knowledge, Mr. Breen believes that he does not have the recordings of the tapes anymore. He does not recall specifically deleting the recording or doing anything with it. However, he believes that it may have been saved on a device that he no longer has. Okay, interesting. Or was it destroyed? Like Deputy Commissioner Brian Brannon testified at the MCC. He said it was destroyed. Huh. He doesn't recall it being destroyed. It's destroyed. Okay. All right. And missing notes of Campbell. And Cromwell in the background at the MCC, just spanking the shit out of the, pardon my language, sir. He's absolutely beating the hell out of the DOJ. This guy is amazing. I'd like to buy him a beer one day, or a glass of scotch, perhaps a bottle. DOJ's response was then, blah, blah, blah. And you can go through it yourself. But this was all known on the 24th. That's that little snippet I made. I don't think I ever put that out. But here in this email, this is the stuff to do with the map and the timelines. This is how much they cared. Wondering if we could have the inventory of the weapons used and the weapons seized. GOC and minister anxiously awaiting. Thanks in advance, Brenda. Did she care about the map? Did she care about the timeline? No, she cared about the government of Canada and the minister anxiously awaiting what? Guns. These people are sick. Billy having a drunk fest, but he knew what was guns were being used, and it was wretched what he said.
Morning, Prime Minister. Tom Perry, CBC. You've promised a ban on assault-style weapons.
I got clips.
Given what we know about the shooting in Nova Scotia, could that have prevented these crimes? And if not, would you consider even tighter gun control measures?
As we know, this is very much
It's not like these aren't seeded, planted questions either. What about guns? Guns. Do you know about the guns? Do you know what happened? How about let's start with that? How many people do you have assigned to this? Like getting into the meat and potatoes of things. No, you want to start off with guns.
Ongoing investigation that's in its early stages in Nova Scotia right now, so I don't want to jump to conclusions or make characterizations about what happened until we get a full accounting from the authorities.
But what you did want was the guns on an ongoing investigation.
But in regards to gun control, we took very serious commitments in the election campaign and have moved forward and are moving forward on them to ensure that we're strengthening gun control in this country. I can say that we were on the verge of introducing legislation to ban assault-style weapons across this country. It was interrupted when the pandemic caused Parliament to be suspended. But we have every intention of moving forward on that measure and potentially other measures when the Parliament returns.
It's almost like New Zealand, you know? I don't know, just saying that, right? They happen to trot out some legislation right away. That was odd. That kind of legislation takes a long time to draft up. But you see, it's the crisis that comes along, and then you can say, well, there's something about immigration tweet. Another event that happened. Here's Billy. Listen to him carefully. May 1st.
The RCMP will, at the completion of their investigation, be able to advise all Canadians where those guns come from and what type of guns were used. But I will tell you, I have sufficient information to know that when Canadians have that knowledge, they will understand the very clear and compelling connection between what happened in Nova Scotia and the weapons that we prohibited today.
Will you now? He knows the guns. Canadians will clearly understand the overwhelming, what was it? Let me get this.
Type of guns were used, but I will tell you, I have sufficient information to know that when Canadians have that knowledge, they will understand the very clear and compelling connection between what happened in Nova Scotia and the weapons that we prohibited today.
No, that was a lie. Nothing to do with it. Clear and compelling. Clear. Now Drunky Blair's disappeared. Rah. Of course they knew. Of course they knew. Thanks for the credit, by the way. It didn't go unnoticed. I'm collecting names.
With respect to the firearms in the government's possession, this component of the investigation remains active and involves other domestic and international law enforcement partner agencies. At this time, I can only provide limited details. What can be confirmed is that the government had acquired all of these firearms illegally. Of the 5 firearms found in the government's possession on April 19th, 3 were obtained illegally from the United States. 1 was obtained illegally in Canada through the estate of an associate who is deceased, or a deceased associate of the government. And these are the 4 firearms that we have previously indicated the government had on April 18th.
Must be clear and compelling. I missed it. Between the gun legislation and the 3 illegally obtained guns, and 1 that was illegally obtained, illegally smuggled, and the 1 that was illegally obtained, which of course nobody got charged for. There's other guns. What about that 357? Oh, you can't charge that guy because he's dead. What about the 357? Nobody got charged in that one. And who gave that person the 357? Even though they have a PAL. They didn't legally go to get it. And they were very afraid of telling them who they acquired the gun from. Getting spicy. Gonna start opening up. Yes. So, I mean, these committees and things, and that was all back to the beginning of the video. That was all the debate about the dates. Everything is dates. How can we sneak things in? How can we finish the mass casualty commission? And then, evidence, we can drop some and nobody will be paying attention because we'll move along and we'll use shit in the media. Who was that somebody posted? I like that too. That was a really great response I saw somebody give to, where's that? Probably I won't be able to find it now. About how global they run around. And then they're like, well, no, there's no evidence here at all of anybody lying. The media does this. Fuck off. You have the proof. And then they equally lie and perpetrate these lies on people who aren't as knowledgeable about the story because they're being inundated with all kinds of other things. I'm not going to go into, I just try to stick with the evidence, because and they like that. Not saying anything about you or people, but there are people. There are certainly people. I made a nice little thing the other day, getting somebody else in amongst our group. And I was like, oh, yeah, you see, they claim to be good, but they're not. Dangerous. A lot of dangerous people around. But there are good people around too. And there are good people who want the truth, who have asked for the truth, and who pursue at their own how do you say that? I don't know. You guys know. The ones, that are doing on the good side of things. Seeking the truth. Takes time, tons of time. It impacts your family, and that's why it's so much bigger than just the 23 and the 23's friends and family. And obviously now we're talking about all the other issues that go along the side with that, which aren't frankly side issues, because lying to Parliament, lying to the Canadian public, but these all dovetail into the other things, the SNC Lavalin or the trucker stuff. It's all just cover your ass. People think this is much more interesting than POEC BS. Oh, hey, Linda. How's it going? Olivia, good news. Cindy. But again, isn't it interesting? The dates, right? They want to snow people with all kinds of stuff. They're all basically that goes down to the same stuff: lying, deceit, cover your ass. And when something comes out, then you look like a good guy, right? That email that one of the good people in the background sent, all about how can you get somewhere. Their points. I think it's like they all know the points, how it works. You'll just get away with what you can until you get caught. And then when you get caught, you try and come out on top, and you try and use that to further yourself, even though you're a piece of trash to begin with, because you didn't come out and say anything to begin with, which was like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Because they're afraid. And I get it. I have spoken to members. I understand how much they get run over. and it doesn't matter if it's a member, it could be anybody involved in the government or whatever. They just run the hell out of them. They blacklist them, they investigate them, they literally investigate them, try and charge them, frame them, do all kinds of really horrible things. And I get it, that's tough. But what it is if you got big balls, you're going to stand up, because all it does is just keep going down further. Anyway, you think this is more interesting than the? Is it because there's more invested on this side, oh dear, than the emergency stuff? It's all, I mean, and then, those are things where definitely not things that I know you don't keep an eye on for sure. That's the thing. A lot of people are keeping an eye on a lot of things now, but it's juggling all those balls. But they all kind of meld together. Anyway. All right. I'm going to try and compile the video for the question period today, because that should be fairly interesting. Hello, Ms. Grandma. It is. Well, frankly, at least on a personal level, my attachment to Tara does. And now, as a result, a lot of other family members. For me, it just makes it a little bit more. And I think, but you got to pick the battles. And that was why I was torn, because the emergency stuff is definitely something I wanted to get into, because I've been following that one in the background, the Kovu stuff, for a long time. But I just don't, well, since before. But I don't think that I can divest myself of this one at this point in time. Thank you, Grandma. All right. Anyway, I will not hold you up any further. I will try and get the House of Commons. Oh, and I wanted to drop that other meeting from before that I never released. Anyway, they have already proven that the Emergency Act they just want to have, they want to figure out how they can use things. It's just crises and everything, right? That's just another goddamn one. Hubby and I came home with the coffee. What coffee? I'm not sure. Lucky is Trudeau's flunky. Okay, well, I don't, again, that's veering off into territory that the speculative stuff, whilst I appreciate it and may or may not be true, there's also a lot of disinformation that's being thrown out intentionally that has been from the start. From places that it shouldn't have been. If the world was an honest place. Anyway. Oh, the Kofu. Oh no, that's terrible. Well, I hope you didn't use the app that they lied about. Took all the money somebody ran off with. How much is our debt at again? Nobody ever likes to talk about that one. M1 money supply. The inflation. Wonder where that was coming from. It's not like it wasn't happening anywhere else in the world. It's almost like it was, what? What did they say? Lockstep. Coming here? No. Okay, gonna ignore me. All right. Do have a fantastic day. Does anybody have, before I sign off, does anybody have any advice on, Nova is a little barky. She's gotten very barky. When I first bought her, I thought she was mute because she didn't do anything. Now she barks all the time. She's very anxious. I don't know if she's just picking up the world around her or what, but she barks at the smallest things and barks at pretty much anybody around. It's very sad. I can't figure out how to help her. Maybe my girlfriend's dog will give her a... They play so well together. They're funny. He's so big and she's so tiny. Tara was like, what did she say? Something today. She's like, oh, you know, it weighs like 7 pounds. Nova weighs like 7 pounds. My girlfriend's like, no, she weighs like 3 pounds. And I think Tara thought she was kidding. She weighs like honestly 3 point something pounds. Tiny. Dog needs another dog buddy. She has a little dog buddy. Well, big dog buddy. She's just talking. She needs another puppy to play with. Oh God. I don't think I can take on another dog at this time. I like that. I have videos of my old dog, T, before I had to put him down, which was very sad. But luckily I had Nova and T together, so I have some videos of them. And he was very patient. And she would run around and causing all kinds of stuff, and he couldn't really see, and she'd, jump all over him, and he was just old. And he's like, I'm done. I'm finished of this world. But it was nice to see the transition from one generation to the next. See what I'm talking about? A lot of barking. Stop it. No more barking. Do take care. And have a fantastic rest of your day. God bless you. God bless the 23.